that it could actually be useful to them. And then, of course, what you'd expect to see is that you have to have buy-in from the sort of at least board level, and this let's say this was a Group 3 person who was saying that they actually recognised that there was this investment up front when you're using something new for the first time, but actually the next time you do it, it's going to be a lot easier because you've already acquired the skills and so on. So it's recognising that, and it's getting across that first hurdle that there is going to be a cost, but then once you've done that, then modelling might take off. So again, unsurprisingly, in terms of barriers, it was the time. People were so pressurised with urgent things that had to be done this afternoon that they didn't have time to look at it. And this came up in all 3 groups, really. Time and capacity, literally finding the physical time to put in from individuals. It's very difficult to find time to think strategically, etc. I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted. Things that helped. Interesting, again, this sort of came up in the talk discussion this morning. It's the personal touch. It's the fact that Claire has an NHS background, so that people, she talks the talk that NHS people understand, and that the technical, the online and that on the phone there was support available for people when they got stuck. It's so easy to get discouraged with something when you run into with any software tool, where we all know the minute you run into something that is doesn't quite work the way it should, you do need someone there to help you with it. And so again, this was mentioned several times, the personal touch. I've already mentioned world-class commissioning. And I think having somebody, an enthusiastic person who's not necessarily the person that does the modelling, or not necessarily a senior person. We found a number of different people doing this role in organisations, but somebody that just really understands modelling. And I'm sure actually all of you that are in the room today are those of you who aren't academics are these people, because that's why you're here. But then there are a lot of people who actually really don't understand what benefits modelling could have, and it's just so important to have that particular personality type, that person who can go out and evangelise about modelling. It's really important to have a problem. I mean, like in the modelling, my work in Nottingham, it was having a problem that was actually timely and urgent to be dealt with by the local health economy. The other issue is engagement and support, and having the right people in the team to actually do this kind of modelling. And I think often the problem is that modelling really requires a whole range of different skills. For a modelling intervention to be successful, you do need a range of different people involved, not just the people building the model or gathering the data, but it's the combination of these and the vision to see what the model could be used for, and to think strategically and to understand how to do that. And if you don't have that, then if you don't have any one part of those, then it's just so much harder. So we looked at who are the people that are doing the modelling, and I think Group 2 was the most interesting. There were really 2 extremes. There were people who were already expert modellers, often in Simulate, and so they were given SG and they were told, here you are, here's a new package, try this. And they found it too restrictive. They wanted to get under the bonnet and actually start tweaking and putting in things for themselves. At the other end, there were people who just really found it just too complicated. It was their first exposure to any kind of modelling, and they found it hard. So here's a quote from this person who was not at all a modeller herself. She said she didn't even know about modelling tools. She didn't even know they existed. Now I make people laugh at work because I'm such an enthusiast. I'm not an analyst, but with my strategy hat on, what I've seen these tools can do, I think it's fantastic. So that's the sort of person that you really need to get involved in a modelling project. So we had a number of sort of outcomes from this, which included a sort of list of suggestions, recommendations to the different stakeholder groups, the NHS Institute, to simulate cooperation as to how they might help to NHS users and so on. I think if you don't remember anything else about being brave and having a go is an important thing. So many people think that modelling is terribly difficult and you've got to have a master's in OR or something to do it. The whole idea is that, that there are tools out there which you don't need to be a statistical PhD to use. Obvious things like getting senior management buy-in, etc. We thought it was interesting about the idea of working with external consultants or universities. And again, this is in terms of actually sustaining the model. It's really important that there's not just one person in the institute, in the trust or the organisation who knows how the model works. You really need a number of people so that if that person leaves, as we saw happen several times in group 2, it was because a key person had left and they were the only person that really understood how the software works. So again, as academics, it's really frustrating for us to have built models and just to see them sitting on the shelf because the person that we work with in our local hospital has moved on to another role and nobody else really knows about the project. I'm sure we've all got stories to tell like that. So this kind of leads on really to a number of challenges for all of us. I think for us academics, it's really important that we look at this generic, specific question. And there are a lot of very interesting research questions about which parts of a model or a system are generic and which parts have to be done afresh every time. And how can we build simple models which are still rigorous? So how can we build a model which is as much to do with visualizing the data, explaining things in terms, finding the right language to use for explaining the models? I mean, we all drive cars that have incredibly complicated computers and things in the engine, which none of us understand, but we're quite happy to get in the car and drive it and believe that if it tells us we've only got 35 miles worth of petrol left, then that's probably just about right. But underneath that, there's obviously some sort of model going, and yet we trust it. So we need to be able to ensure that those models are academically correct, and we're not providing misleading information. But it has to be done in a simple way that is appropriate for the user. And I think, as I say, I see this as one of the big research challenges is how we develop these modelling tools which combine both of those features. This point is going on being more and more abstract and theoretical and potentially accurate. If no one's ever going to use the model, I think that's just a waste of time. I think in terms of healthcare organisations, it's much more about working together. And again, we heard yesterday some discussions about payment by results and the whole purchaser-provider split and the whole mentality of competition, which has produced a culture in which organisations spend money on modelling and then they really don't want to actually share that with their competitors because they are in a sort of pseudo market. So I think it is much more about working together, and obviously organisations like the Clarks are perfectly placed for doing that. And I think overcoming some of these really tough cultural problems. I think there's really no easy answer to that. I mean, overcoming resistance to change, like that's easy. But I think this is an opportunity now at the moment where there are ways in which people are beginning to work. I mean, we can all see it that organisations are coming together a lot more, and I think that's the way we're going to move forward, is working with each other. So, there's absolutely no doubt that these problems aren't going to go away. They're only going to get worse. There's going to be increasing demand, decreasing supply, huge financial pressures, etc. Mashnet and Cumberland have got very similar roles to play in bringing together these groups. We've got a fantastic resource in terms of master students and other bachelors and PhDs, people coming out of university, having worked in this area, which is such a strong area in the UK. We've got such a fantastic body of young researchers coming through, all really wanting to go out and apply what they've learned in the real world. So I think, you know, it is a real exciting time to see your PhD students going out and actually working on real problems. So I think, again, this is an opportunity we've got that we really can't afford to let slip. So that was the conference, and just again like to thank Claire for all her help in the particular project, and you for listening.